Evan felt the shift the moment Claire asked to postpone the wedding, her voice shaking in a way he couldn't ignore. He tried to believe it was stress, but the silence between them grew heavier each passing night in their quiet home. When he checked the security footage, he expected nothing more than a stray animal or a delivery he'd forgotten about. Instead, he saw Claire stepping inside with Lucas, laughing softly as if the house already belonged to them. The sight hollowed his chest, turning every familiar room into a stage for a truth he never wanted. He replayed the footage, hoping it was a misunderstanding, but each frame cut deeper than the last. Then he found the venue emails, dates, deposits, plans that matched his wedding day with cruel precision. In that moment, Evan realized the postponement wasn't hesitation, but a quiet, calculated betrayal unfolding right before him. Evan sat in the living room long after midnight, staring at the paused frame on the camera screen. The image showed Claire unlocking the door with Lucas behind her, moving with a comfort that crushed him. He forced himself to breathe, but each inhale felt thin, as if the air refused to stay in his lungs. He rewound the footage slowly, watching the pattern appear like bruises forming under skin. Lucas arrived on evenings Evan worked late, slipping through the door with practiced ease. Some nights they stayed only minutes, others stretched into hours filled with muffled laughter. Evan had invited Lucas into this home countless times, never imagining betrayal would enter through the same door. He opened the archive folder and clicked through months of recordings with shaking fingers. Each clip confirmed what he dreaded. This was not a recent mistake, but a long, deliberate deception. He slumped back in the chair, feeling the weight of every moment he had trusted them. The next day, he examined Claire's laptop, telling himself he was only looking for clarity. Hidden in a folder labeled Work Drafts, he discovered receipts for floral arrangements and menu tastings. The signatures on the documents belonged to Claire, but the groom's name written beside hers was Lucas. He stared at the contract, reading the date again and again until the numbers blurred. It matched precisely the weekend that should have been his celebration, his vows, his beginning. He forwarded every file to his personal drive, creating a separate folder marked Evidence. The word felt cold, like something from a courtroom rather than a relationship. He contacted a local attorney recommended by a colleague, someone known for handling complicated engagements. During the consultation, Evan laid out the screenshots, the footage, and the financial documents. The attorney listened quietly, occasionally jotting notes as Evan pushed through each detail. She advised him to secure all joint accounts immediately and change every password he controlled. She explained how shared funds used for a different wedding could be legally reclaimed. Her calm steadiness anchored him when his voice cracked describing the night he found the videos. Evan left the office with a list of steps, each one feeling like a shield against further damage. He spent the evening checking bank statements, tracing withdrawals Claire had made without explanation. Several payments matched deposits for vendors in another county, confirming her secret plans. He printed each transaction, highlighting the ones tied to the hidden wedding. The more he uncovered, the clearer the picture became, and the harder it was to deny. He replayed their recent conversations, remembering each vague excuse about pressure and timing. Now he understood those hesitations were rehearsed lines, masking intentions already set in motion. His heart ached, but his resolve tightened as he organized the documents into a single binder. He realized he could no longer hope for an explanation that would soften the truth. What lay ahead would be painful, but the evidence had given him direction. He would no longer be the unsuspecting man kept in the dark by the people he trusted most. Evan woke early the next morning, with a sharp clarity that surprised him after a sleepless night. He watched Claire move around the kitchen, acting gentle, asking about his plans as if nothing had shifted. Each word from her felt scripted, a careful performance designed to keep him calm and unaware. He pretended to respond naturally, but inside he measured every tone and every excuse she offered. When she left for an appointment, Evan checked her location history and saw the same street repeatedly. It was the boutique district where bridal shops lined the sidewalks, bright and unforgiving in the daylight. He drove there quietly, parking across from a large store with mirrored windows and velvet curtains. A few minutes later, Claire stepped out of a car with Lucas beside her, smiling like a bride already chosen. Evan watched them walk inside, his hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles blanched. He didn't follow them in. He needed proof, not confrontation, and rage would only cloud his judgment. He photographed the storefront, the timestamp, and the car they arrived in before driving away. Back home, he reviewed the footage again, matching time stamps with Claire's false explanations. His attorney had asked him to gather consistent behavior patterns, and now he had more than enough. That afternoon, Claire called him, her voice overly sweet, asking if he wanted takeout for dinner. He listened closely, trying to hear guilt, but all he sensed was a rehearsed calm. When she returned home, her hair was styled differently, and the faint scent of perfume lingered on her coat. Evan asked how her errand went, and she answered smoothly, claiming she met a friend at a cafe. He noted every detail, adding mental checkmarks to the long list of fabricated stories. Over the next days, he tracked her movements with quiet precision, building a timeline of deception. Claire visited photographers, florists, and planners, always meeting Lucas at least once during the day. Evan captured each visit using his phone, careful to document without being seen. The attorney reviewed the updates and told him the evidence now formed a solid, undeniable pattern. She suggested he prepare for a direct confrontation at a moment where the truth couldn't be hidden. Evan chose the upcoming appointment Claire had scheduled at a popular countryside venue. The booking email appeared in the shared inbox, giving him the perfect chance to intervene. He and the attorney coordinated a plan to arrive before the couple and request to meet the manager. They intended to stop the venue from approving any arrangements tied to misused funds. The night before the appointment, Evan barely slept, though not from heartbreak anymore. He felt a shift from grief to determination, a steady resolve shaping itself in his chest. He organized every printed document into a folder, labeled simply with their engagement date. Holding it felt symbolic, like reclaiming a piece of himself from the chaos Claire had created. He understood the next day would bring shock, anger, and consequences neither Claire nor Lucas expected. But he also knew the confrontation would finally end the shadows, lies, and silent betrayals haunting him. When morning arrived, Evan dressed carefully, breathed deeply, and stepped out ready to end their illusion. Evan arrived at the venue early, carrying the binder full of evidence like armor against betrayal. The receptionist greeted him politely, unaware of the storm about to enter the elegant space. He spotted Claire and Lucas in the lobby, laughing and talking as if the day belonged only to them. His chest tightened, but he stepped forward with measured calm, signaling the attorney who followed. Claire's smile faltered slightly when she noticed Evan, but she quickly masked it with a casual wave. Lucas looked up, curiosity and a hint of unease flickering in his eyes at the unexpected sight. Evan opened the binder slowly, placing it on the table between them, its weight impossible to ignore. He clicked a laptop to life, playing the first video of Claire and Lucas entering his home late at night. Claire gasped softly, covering her mouth as each frame showed moments of intimacy she thought private. Lucas shifted uncomfortably, realizing the meticulous documentation left no room for excuses. Evan spoke clearly, his voice steady, each word cutting through the tension in the room. "This is the night you chose to betray our trust. These are the hours you stole from me." He played the next clip, showing them laughing over documents for a wedding with dates matching his own. The attorney handed over the printed contracts, highlighting deposits made from joint accounts. "You used our funds to finance another life while pretending to hesitate," Evan continued firmly. Claire's eyes filled with tears, but her words came out rehearsed, weak defenses failing at every turn. Lucas attempted to speak, but Evan raised a hand, silencing him with calm authority. The truth doesn't need justification. Actions speak louder than excuses ever could, he said. The venue manager, previously observing silently, stepped forward with a serious expression. After reviewing the contracts and videos, they canceled the booking immediately, refusing any cooperation. Claire's protests fell flat, her attempts to negotiate or explain rendered meaningless by the evidence. Evan turned to Lucas, voice firm but controlled, detailing the notifications sent to his girlfriend. The revelation left Lucas pale, realizing the betrayal had now triggered a wider personal collapse. Claire sank into a chair, shame and panic overtaking any semblance of composure she had left. Evan remained standing, resolute, letting the weight of truth settle over the room. The attorney guided him to document the venue's actions, ensuring the evidence was legally binding. They photographed receipts, signed cancellations, and vendor communications for further protection. Claire's attempts to justify her behavior grew more desperate, but Evan refused to engage. Each failed argument only emphasized the contrast between deception and integrity in the room. Lucas shifted from foot to foot, finally realizing the social and financial consequences closing in. Evan calmly packed the binder, the videos and contracts securing his position firmly. He paused at the door, glancing back at Claire one last time without a word of mercy. The venue staff nodded, confirming no further communication would be tolerated with the couple. Evan left with the attorney by his side, feeling a strange clarity and relief settle in his chest. The confrontation had been brutal, but the evidence had dismantled the lies with surgical precision. He understood that reclaiming control was not about revenge, but about protecting what was rightfully his. Outside, the sun fell across the city streets, and Evan finally exhaled, ready to face the consequences beyond. The news spread quickly, reaching both families in ways Evan had expected and feared. Lucas's family reacted first, their initial instinct to defend him clashing with the evidence laid bare. Arguments erupted at the dinner table, voices raised as elders demanded accountability for his betrayal. Evan's revelations about the hidden wedding shook them to the core, leaving no room for denial. Claire's family scrambled to contain the scandal, fearing social backlash and financial exposure. They offered hush money, hoping Evan would stay silent and let the embarrassment fade. Evan refused, his resolve unshaken by bribes or pleas for leniency. He demanded every dollar Claire had misused be returned immediately, leaving no compromise. Phone calls and messages flooded in from relatives, each one pressing for explanations or alignment. Some supported him, admiring his calm and methodical handling of the situation. Others attempted to mediate, but Evan maintained firm boundaries, refusing to negotiate morality. Family gatherings became tense, with whispered conversations and sideways glances marking his path. At his home, Claire appeared multiple times, begging for meetings, trying to explain herself. Evan allowed no discussion, listening only with the clarity of someone who had already seen the truth. Corporate settings mirrored the chaos, as colleagues learned of Claire's duplicity and reacted strongly. She faced awkward confrontations, whispered warnings, and subtle exclusions from office events. Lucas's social circle shrank rapidly, friends distancing themselves as loyalty fractured under pressure. Evan tracked every development, keeping his own documentation in case disputes escalated. Vendor relationships shifted, with some reaching out to confirm reimbursements and cancel future services. Evan coordinated directly, recovering deposits and preventing further financial loss from the deception. Family members who had doubted him now approached with cautious respect, acknowledging his foresight. His grandmother, once a voice of calm judgment, became a staunch ally in defending his integrity. Evan attended gatherings with composure, facing questions without anger, letting evidence speak for itself. Each encounter reinforced his understanding that truth and patience outweighed impulsive retaliation. Claire's attempts to sway opinions failed, her credibility eroding with every retelling of the scandal. Lucas's relatives began turning against him, citing Evan's professionalism and unwavering documentation. The social fallout extended beyond families, as mutual friends chose sides in whispered alliances. Evan stayed detached, focusing on practical resolutions rather than petty vengeance or drama. Legal consultations continued, ensuring the recovered funds and canceled contracts remained secure. Claire's repeated messages went unanswered, her appeals met with Evan's consistent silence. Lucas faced isolation, his previous confidence replaced by cautious, regretful movements in public. Evan's control of the narrative grew stronger, each interaction reinforcing his moral and social position. The families slowly accepted the consequences, realizing Evan had acted decisively and fairly. By the end of the week, he had stabilized finances, secured personal boundaries, and protected his reputation. Each confrontation, each document, and each firm refusal had reinforced his integrity and clarity. Evan walked through the turmoil with steady resolve, knowing he had reclaimed what was rightfully his. In the midst of chaos, he discovered a strength rooted in truth, patience, and unwavering self-respect. Evan spent the following week contacting every vendor involved in Claire and Lucas's secret wedding. He confirmed deposits, contracts, and reservations, ensuring each payment could be reclaimed. Some vendors resisted at first, hesitant to cancel arrangements for a couple they had already committed to. Evan remained calm, presenting clear evidence and legal guidance from his attorney. One by one, the vendors acknowledged the mistake, returning deposits and canceling future services. He documented every interaction meticulously, creating a complete record for potential disputes. Claire's attempts to reach him grew desperate, messages flooding his phone from morning to night. Evan ignored them, focusing instead on practical actions that would secure his finances. Lucas tried calling as well, his voice shaky when he realized Evan would not respond. Friends who had once supported Lucas began to question him, leaving him isolated and anxious. Evan met with the attorney twice more, reviewing contracts and ensuring all funds were legally recovered. Each recovered payment felt like reclaiming control, a tangible victory after weeks of betrayal. Claire attempted to explain, citing stress, misunderstanding, or even misplaced affection. Evan listened without speaking, letting the evidence and facts speak louder than excuses. The office environment shifted subtly, with colleagues murmuring about Claire's ethical failings. Her reputation suffered, and she was increasingly excluded from projects and informal gatherings. Lucas faced similar consequences socially, friends and family turning away after learning the full story. Evan maintained composure, handling questions and challenges with quiet confidence. He coordinated vendor calls, ensuring contracts were closed properly and refunds processed swiftly. Some vendors offered apologies, admitting they had unknowingly facilitated deceit and wanted to correct it. Evan accepted the corrections, never seeking revenge, only restoring what had been taken. Claire continued to try manipulation, attempting to appeal to his emotions or sense of forgiveness. Evan's responses remained steady, unwavering, and deliberately silent when words were unnecessary. He observed the ripple effect on Lucas, whose once confident demeanor was now replaced with shame. Each confrontation, though indirect, reinforced Evan's moral and financial authority. Family gatherings became calmer, with relatives acknowledging Evan's careful, measured handling. His grandmother praised his restraint, highlighting how patience and evidence had guided his actions. Evan attended each meeting with professionalism, never letting personal anger cloud judgment. The recovered funds stabilized his accounts, returning financial security lost to the secret wedding. He made notes for future precautions, ensuring that similar deception could never threaten him again. Claire's repeated attempts to meet or reconcile ended with polite refusals and firm boundaries. Lucas's social isolation deepened as friends distanced themselves, echoing Evan's controlled response. Evan focused on rebuilding normalcy, resuming work and personal routines with renewed clarity. He understood that integrity, patience, and careful action had restored his position fully. By the end of the week, Evan had recovered nearly all financial losses and safeguarded his reputation. He felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing he had handled betrayal decisively without losing dignity. Every recovered contract and deposit symbolized more than money. It was reclaiming control and trust. Evan allowed himself small moments of relief, appreciating the calm that followed deliberate action. His clarity grew stronger, understanding that truth, evidence, and composure were his most powerful tools. Through methodical action, Evan had turned betrayal into a structured process of justice and resolution. 3 weeks later, Lucas's life had begun to crumble under the weight of his choices and exposure. He struggled at work, arriving late or skipping shifts, distracted by the fallout of the secret wedding. His colleagues noticed, whispering about his sudden unreliability and erratic behavior. Evan heard through mutual contacts that Lucas was losing trust and respect in every circle he had once dominated. Claire faced similar consequences at her company, forced to work remotely after rumors of misconduct spread. Her social network at work shrank, leaving her isolated and cautious with every interaction. Both were effectively blacklisted in the local wedding industry, their names associated with deceit. Vendors and planners refused to work with them, remembering the contracts and cancellations handled by Evan. Even family gatherings became tense for them, with relatives reluctant to include them in events. Evan's grandmother officially removed Lucas from any inheritance discussions, signaling a total loss of favor. Evan, in contrast, experienced a gradual rebuilding of life and confidence after weeks of turmoil. He booked a solo trip to Europe, seeking distance and clarity away from the constant reminders. The travel gave him space to reflect, to breathe, and to imagine a future free from betrayal. He explored cities, met new people, and allowed himself to enjoy simple moments he had neglected. His confidence returned slowly, paired with a renewed sense of self-worth and independence. News of Lucas and Claire's downfall reached Evan intermittently, confirming his patience and strategy had worked. Friends and family expressed admiration for how he handled the situation, noting his restraint and foresight. Evan avoided dwelling on revenge, focusing instead on recovery, growth, and personal goals. Letters and messages from Claire went unanswered, her attempts to reconnect met only with silence. Lucas tried to apologize in person, but Evan firmly ended their 25-year friendship without hesitation. The closure was necessary, leaving no space for repeated betrayal or lingering doubt. Evan reflected on the lessons learned. Trust actions, not words, and evidence outweighs excuses. He acknowledged the pain, but also recognized it as a catalyst for clarity and self-respect. Traveling alone, he met new acquaintances and began small connections that felt genuine. The process of healing was gradual, but each day strengthened his sense of personal boundaries. He returned home with a clearer vision of the future, more selective about who he allowed near. Evan resumed work and social life with renewed energy, engaging in projects with purpose. He understood that his experience had taught him the value of patience, observation, and decisive action. His finances were secure, his reputation intact, and his emotional state steadily improving. Occasionally, he would hear others gossip about his past engagement, but he let it pass with a quiet smile. When asked why he remained single, he finally had an answer that carried both humor and dignity. "Because I save my trust for the right person, not for someone willing to betray it," he said softly. The scandal that once felt like ruin had transformed into a lesson, in resilience and strategic clarity. Evan now lived with confidence, knowing that integrity, patience, and careful action always prevail. He embraced new opportunities, relationships, and experiences without fear or haste. The past no longer controlled him. It had shaped him into someone stronger, wiser, and unshakable. Evan's story became a quiet reminder to himself and others. Betrayal can be survived, and dignity reclaimed. Every step forward reflected the culmination of patience, evidence, and unwavering self-respect. He smiled at the horizon, ready for whatever came next, unburdened and fully alive. Months later, Evan ran into Claire unexpectedly at a mutual friend's gathering. She approached him cautiously, eyes glistening, voice trembling as she asked for forgiveness. Evan listened silently, the weight of betrayal still fresh but his calm unshaken. He shook his head gently, choosing dignity over confrontation or false reconciliation. Lucas appeared next, attempting to apologize and repair the long friendship they once shared. Evan met his gaze evenly, acknowledging the past but refusing to let it define the future. He explained that some breaches of trust cannot be mended, and boundaries must remain firm. Claire's pleas faded into the background as Evan stepped away, resolute in his decision. Lucas, now isolated socially and professionally, realized the full consequences of his actions. Evan felt a quiet strength, knowing he had acted with integrity and fairness throughout. He reflected on the lessons: trust actions, not words, and let evidence guide judgment. His finances, reputation, and self-respect remained intact, untouched by their deception. Evan smiled softly, recognizing that ending toxic ties created space for growth and new connections. The story of betrayal had closed, leaving him wiser, stronger, and fully in control of his life. When asked why he remained single, he now had a clear answer, confident and unwavering. "Because I value honesty and respect above all else," he said, walking forward with calm assurance.